The message came in like a whisper. Static at first. Then screaming. It was past midnight in the deep orbit relay station above Europa when the transmission was intercepted. I remember because I was chewing on stale ration bars, thinking about how much I hated the cold hum of recycled air and the endless silence between bursts of traffic across the stars. That night, I was alone on comms. Just me, a console blinking faintly, and a cup of synth coffee that tasted like burnt plastic and regret. And then it happened. A voice. Ragged, desperate, not human. It wasn't one of ours. Not even a registered species from the Concordat treaties. It was something else. Something scared. We escaped. Help. Human. They take the little ones. They take your kind. I sat up straight. My stomach dropped. There's a rule in deep space listening posts. Never take unauthorized broadcasts seriously. 99% of them are just junk. Derelict probes, scavenger AI loops, rogue fragments of abandoned languages bouncing back off solar winds. But this hit different. It was the way he said your kind. I replayed the message 3 times, cleaned it with the decryption filters. It wasn't a hoax. Coordinates came embedded in the pulse packet, buried under layers of cryptic alien code. Real as the chill that spread through my spine when I ran the translation again. They enslave your children, thousands, humans. They bleed in cages. Help us. I didn't sleep after that. I barely blinked. I sent it straight to the Terran Diplomatic Emergency Channel. Normally that'd take weeks to be reviewed. But 3 hours later, the silence broke. My comms deck lit up like a war zone. Earth was listening. 2 days later, I was reassigned. They flew me to Mars. Military base, sealed ops. I was greeted by people who didn't wear insignia and didn't give names. The kind of people who looked at you like they knew your deepest sins before you spoke. One of them, a hard-faced woman with zero expression, dropped a data pad in front of me. "You're the one who heard it," she said. I nodded. "Then you're on the team." I didn't argue. I didn't even ask what the mission was. I knew. Everyone knew. Earth wasn't the same anymore. We weren't the fledgling species begging for a seat at the galactic table. Not after the Hell's Gate incident. Not after we wiped out an entire war fleet with one suicide-class cruiser and a pissed-off AI pilot who wanted revenge more than survival. No, we weren't the scared kids anymore. We were the species that even empires whispered about. We were the monsters that monsters feared. The mission brief was simple. A mining colony in the Eroth sector. Private operation, unregulated, off books. It was supposed to be closed down years ago after a civil dispute between the local slavers and the Orion Pact. But it wasn't. It had gone dark, deliberately. And somehow, somewhere, someone thought it was a good idea to start snatching human children off colony ships, border towns, even poor zones on Terra itself. No ransom. No demands. Just vanished. Like ghosts in the system. Now we knew where they were. We weren't sending a rescue team. We were sending a message. Our dropship exited slipspace 3 clicks outside the sector border. Silent. Cloaked. No lights. Just death drifting toward its target. The squad was small. 10 of us. No rookies, no questions. Just hardened bastards with too many ghosts and one reason to still wake up in the morning. Rage. I remember the silence before the drop. No speeches, no prayers, just the cold sound of weapons being checked, armor sealing up, helmets hissing into place. Then the captain, ex-merc, all scars and no soul, spoke through the comm. "They touched our kids." That was it. That was all he said. And that was all we needed. The drop wasn't loud. It wasn't glorious or cinematic. It was quiet, sterile, almost surgical. We fell through the black, shields tight, heat dampeners cranked up, coasting on silent thrusters. No comm chatter, no unnecessary movements. Every man on that squad had lost someone, not just to war or time, but to the kind of darkness no one talks about. Some lost siblings, some lost children. One of them, Brannick, the big guy, hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since his daughter vanished from a refugee ship out near Vespera Station. Turned out that ship never made it to the station. Now we knew why. As our dropship broke the thin atmospheric layer of the mining moon, the view came into focus. It wasn't a world meant for life. Jagged terrain, toxic air, no vegetation, just rock and dust and the glint of metal built where no light should ever shine. The colony was embedded into a massive cliff wall, half submerged in tunnels, the other half stacked like rusted cargo crates. No beacons, no signs of trade, no welcoming party, just rot. We landed without resistance. No alarms, no sentries. That was the first red flag. The second came when we reached the outer perimeter, and there were no bodies, no workers, no slavers, no guards, just silence. And the smell. It was thick, metallic, like blood and ash baked into the dirt. I kept thinking it was just the sulfur content in the soil until we reached the entrance hatch. Brannick was first through. His boot hit something that cracked. Bone. Small. Human. I locked eyes with him. He didn't flinch, just stepped over it and kept going. The corridors inside the station were tight, rusted, built by creatures who didn't value light or space. No signs of life. Not even the hum of machinery. It felt abandoned, but not long abandoned. Food trays still had moldy remnants. Tools lay scattered. Terminals flickered with dying power. Someone had left in a hurry, or been made to. As we advanced, I kept looking for signs, anything that could give us a clue to where they took the children. The place felt like a maze carved by lunatics. No logic to the layout, no air system that made sense, just tunnels and chambers and stairs that looped back on themselves like a trap. We found the first real clue an hour in. A room, sealed with rusted gates and strange glyphs scorched into the metal. Inside, the walls were painted in something that had dried black. And the floor had chains. Dozens. All bolted to the ground, spaced just far enough apart to keep people from touching each other. Children-sized shackles. Some still had fragments of fabric in them. Earth-made. There was a drawing on the wall, scratched in with nails or tools. A little stick figure with big eyes. And below it, written in broken Terran script, "Home?" I stepped out and threw up. I'd seen war, I'd seen executions, massacres, bombed cities, and empty nurseries. But this was different. This was deliberate. You don't cage children unless your soul's already dead. The deeper we went, the worse it got. Chambers filled with restraints, feeding tubes, medical slabs stained with what looked like dried plasma, the kind of place where no screams could reach the surface. We found a room filled with data cores. Brannick ripped one out and tossed it to me. "Run it." I linked it to my wrist pad, decrypted it on the move. Most of it was corrupted garbage. But then I found something. A file with a strange tag. TR-19 hum vocal pattern. It was a recording. I hesitated. Then I played it. A voice filled the chamber. Young, female, maybe 10 years old. "Please, I want to go home. I won't tell anyone, I promise. Please, it hurts." Then screaming, I paused it. I couldn't go on. My throat closed up. Brannick didn't speak. He just punched the wall hard enough to leave a dent in the steel. We weren't dealing with slavers. We were dealing with monsters. No species with even a flicker of conscience would have done this. These weren't people looking for labor or profit. This was experimentation. They were testing Terran children, voices, languages, reactions to pain, probably even how much trauma a young human mind could absorb before breaking. For what reason? We didn't know. We didn't care. All that mattered was what came next. Retribution. We split into teams, cleared the tunnels systematically. Each level had signs of different uses: cells, testing chambers, birthing rooms. That one hit hard. Most were empty. One wasn't. She was sitting in the corner, alone, thin as bones strung together by desperation. Her eyes barely moved when the light hit her. She wasn't older than 8. Brannick dropped to one knee, slowly. Didn't take off his helmet. Didn't want to scare her more. He pulled out a protein bar, held it out. She looked at it. Then she looked past him and whispered something so soft I almost didn't catch it. They burned the others. I blinked. What? She looked me dead in the eyes. They didn't want anyone to find them. They knew you'd come. My heart stopped. I activated my wrist pad, scanned the area. Traces of combustion agents. Recent. That was why the place was empty. They knew Earth would find out. They were running. And they were trying to erase the evidence. The girl led us to a lower tunnel. A transport route. Fresh tracks, freight haulers, Starcraft class. They were already gone, but they weren't fast enough. A ship that size leaves a wake signature. I scanned it, fed it through the military net. Got a lock. They were heading toward the unregulated outer rim. That's when the captain called it. New orders. Full pursuit. We're going dark. No official sanction. No galactic treaty cover. This is personal now. We left the mining moon in silence. Took the girl with us. She didn't speak the whole trip. Just held that protein bar like it was the last thing keeping her alive. When we reached the nearest military outpost, Earth Command was waiting. Not with questions, with orders. They'd decrypted the rest of the data cores, found logs, purchase records, experiment reports. All signed off by a shadow coalition of alien species who had decided, in secret, that human children were the perfect candidates for emotional resilience trials, for AI emotion mapping, for pain endurance thresholds. They thought they could do it without us knowing. They were wrong. The president of Earth's Defense Council issued the message himself. No broadcast, no warnings, just one quiet sentence sent to every species involved. We're coming. Then, the stars started burning. One by one, the black sites vanished. No one ever saw the dropships. No one heard the missiles coming. But we knew. We were sent to make sure they never touched another child again. And this time, we weren't just soldiers. We were wrath incarnate. We didn't call it a war, not officially. Wars involve diplomacy, rules, boundaries. This was something else entirely. The command logs labeled our mission series as Zero Echo. That was Earth's way of saying, no trace, no mercy, no one walks away. The enemy? A collection of slaver rings and backroom syndicates, stitched together by credits and cowardice. Dozens of species, some from within the galactic concordate itself. That's what made it worse. These weren't rogue outlaws. Some of them were government-funded. Some wore suits and sat on interstellar councils pretending to care about peace, while secretly green-lighting human child shipments like they were livestock. And Earth had had enough. Our team was hand-picked to make the first strike. Not the last, just the first. The girl we rescued, her name was May. Quiet. Never asked questions. She slept with her fists clenched and woke up screaming, but never cried. We tried to keep her back, far from the action. She refused to stay on any base, refused to talk to anyone but Brannick. clung to his arm like it was her last lifeline. Sometimes I'd see her watching us prep weapons, not scared, not wide-eyed, just waiting. The trail led us to Gyros Station, mid-rim, trade port, officially neutral. Unofficially? It was where scum went to get clean. Every kind of criminal passed through Gyros, but no one touched the upper decks. That's where the brokers lived, not the muscle, the ones who made the calls, the ones who wore rings worth more than small planets and drank the kind of liquor that could melt bone. You know the type. We touched down under civilian ID, old mining crew cover, bought our way in like good little nobodies. I remember the way the station smelled. Too clean. Like a hospital built by lawyers, all chrome and recycled air, no soul, no guilt. We split into pairs, weapons concealed. Brannick and I took the east wing. Recon only, identify the broker, wait for the signal, quiet entry, loud exit. That was the plan. Plans don't survive first contact. We found our target in a lounge suite, sipping wine and flirting with a synthetic escort. Name was Rilvak. Species, Tyran. All scales and smugness. 6 feet of cold intelligence and 5 feet of ego. He'd been on 5 of the shipment logs, signed his name with a flourish next to the words, "Approved for harvest." I wanted to shoot him right there. But Brannick stopped me. Not with words, just a look. We waited. Then the signal came. Blackout. Whole station went dark for 3 seconds. Just enough to let us vanish behind the soundproof suite doors. Rilvak barely had time to stand before Brannick had him by the throat, slammed against the wall. The escort screamed, then dropped as I hit her with a neural stunner. She wasn't real anyway, just wires and pleasure protocols. Brannick didn't talk, he just squeezed. But I had questions. "How many did you sign off on?" Rilvak choked, squirming like a fish pulled too fast from deep water. I don't, just trade, I never touched them." I pulled out a data slate, flicked to a file, showed him a photo. May, shackled, bleeding. His face didn't register shame, just fear. "You thought we wouldn't find out?" I asked. "I'm just logistics. They paid me to arrange transfers." Brannick punched him, once, enough to crack a rib, probably. I leaned in. My voice was ice. "You approved children for torture labs. You put value on pain per kilo. They said it wasn't lethal. They said it was just emotional mapping." Brannick hit him again. This time, teeth flew. Rilvak went down, gasping. I didn't stop him. Because here's the thing no one outside Earth understands. We don't forget our dead, and we don't forgive the people who made them. Rilvak gave us what we needed. Locations, ship routes, contact names. A few of them were Concordat Council members. One of them was a Terran ambassador. Bought off, dirty, burned in place by our own cleanup teams 2 hours later. No trial. The next day, Gyros Station mysteriously lost internal power for 12 hours. When it came back online, 27 people were gone. Airlock errors, the officials claimed. Nobody asked too many questions. Nobody wanted to. We moved fast after that. Burned our way across 5 sectors. Each site was worse than the last. Holding cells deep underground. Lab tanks filled with fluid and little bodies that didn't move. One site had actual auction records, page after page of species bidding on fresh Terran neural architecture. I stopped sleeping after that. Most of us did. We weren't just soldiers anymore. We were justice with a trigger. Then came Talaris Prime. That was when things changed. Talaris wasn't a slaver world. It was a hub, clean on paper, a trade mecca. Delegates from across the galaxy walked its halls, shaking hands and signing treaties. It even had an Earth embassy. But under the surface, there was a vault. And in that vault were cryo chambers, hundreds of them, each one with a child inside. Terran, alive, Frozen? For sale? They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. When we broke in, the alarm didn't go off. The guards didn't fight. They just stood there, paralyzed. Maybe it was the look in our eyes. Maybe it was the girl at our side, the one with the scars and the silence, holding Brannick's hand like it was made of fire and steel. I opened one of the pods. A boy, maybe 12. Heartbeat faint. Name tag on his shirt. Property of Syndicate 7. Brannick didn't say anything. He just pressed the trigger and leveled the whole server room. We took every child out, loaded them into evac shuttles. The fleet met us outside orbit. Not ours. Concordat Patrol. They'd been watching. Their admiral opened a channel. His face was long, blue-skinned, elegant. The kind of look that screams diplomacy and guilt. You are in violation of interstellar law. This is an unsanctioned assault. I stepped forward on the comm screen. You approved slavery. He didn't blink. We approved nothing. You have no proof. I uploaded the files, everything. Auction logs, lab data, confessions, cryo-registry numbers. His face didn't move. You expect that to mean anything? I looked at the kids behind me, then at May. She finally spoke. Show them what Earth means. So we did. Our cruiser opened fire. It wasn't a battle, it was an execution. We burned their lead ship out of the sky before they even finished their warning. 3 more followed. By the time reinforcements arrived, we were already gone. Deep space, cloaked. And behind us? Talaris Prime burned. Millions watched the flames from their windows. Millions cheered. Because Earth had just made a statement. You come for our children? We will come for your stars. It only took 1 week after Talaris burned for the galaxy to turn on itself. No declarations, no alliances announced, just fear. The Concordat High Council scrambled to contain it, flooding every communication channel with fake statements, unconfirmed attacks, civil unrest, radical human extremists. But the rest of the species weren't blind. They had seen the flames from orbit. They'd heard the Terran transmission broadcast before the comm stations were turned to slag. To those who traffic our children, you've been marked. There is no safe world now. Earth is watching. Earth is coming. That one line made entire slave syndicates vanish overnight. And it made 1,000 species start building weapons, because they finally understood. We weren't just responding, we were hunting. The ops ramped up. No more 10-man teams, no more stealth missions. Earth's defense fleet started moving in the open, not under the flag of diplomacy, not peacekeepers, punishers. Some planets complied, opened their ports, handed over their data, their black site locations. We spared them. Others? They stalled, played innocent. We didn't wait for them to finish the act. We dropped kinetic rods from orbit. No explosions, no mess. Just silence, followed by the collapse of every facility built on the blood of human children. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was rebalancing. And I was at the center of it. Brannick and I were reassigned to a ghost fleet, a Terran command ship cluster designed to move without trace, never broadcast, never respond to questions. We were myth on radar. By the time anyone knew we were coming, they were already ashes. May stayed with us. She wouldn't leave Brannick's side, and something inside her had changed. She stopped looking scared. She started watching, listening, absorbing everything. One night, I walked past the weapons bay and saw her disassembling a pulse rifle faster than some recruits I'd trained back in the old days. She didn't cry anymore. She didn't even blink when she saw the maps of targets. In a way, she'd already become what we were. Our next mission took us to Threxal Verge, a gas giant with orbiting slave rigs built into its moons. The place had been blacklisted for years, allegedly abandoned after labor protests. But orbital scans showed heat signatures. irregular shuttling, and encrypted traffic bursts every 28 hours. It didn't take long to confirm it. Still operational. Still taking human cargo. Still pretending no one could see. This one was personal. The last group of Terran children shipped here had been from a floating orphanage off Titan, an old decommissioned educational cruiser that had gone missing 4 months earlier. The entire staff was found later, floating in space, ejected, frozen. We tracked the Syndicate's command node to Rim 6, one of the outer moons. The slavers had repurposed an old terraforming facility into a prison lab hybrid. That's where they processed the kids, broke them, mapped their cognitive patterns, and then sold the data to Biotech Corps. It was the first time I saw Brannick cry. Not loudly, not with sobs. Just one tear, sliding down a face that hadn't changed in expression since we left Earth. I wanted blood. We all did. We didn't wait. We breached from orbit, direct drop pods, firestorm entry. By the time we hit the ground, the first 5 floors of the facility were already burning. Screams echoed through steel walls. They fought back, hard. Turns out they'd been warned. Someone had tipped them off. They had private security, off-world mercs, not local muscle, ex-special ops from other planets, cybernetically enhanced. Good gear, smart tactics. Didn't matter. We were better. We moved like fury through those halls. No calls for surrender, no negotiations. We didn't leave anyone behind. Brannick found a cell block labeled Unspecified Samples. We kicked the door down, found a dozen pods. 7 still had living kids inside. Barely. He opened the nearest one. Inside was a boy. Couldn't have been older than 4. Tubes down his throat. Head shaved. Monitoring sensors stitched into his scalp. When Brannick unplugged him, the boy didn't cry, didn't move. He just whispered, "Is it over?" Brannick didn't speak. He just picked the boy up like glass and carried him out. We rigged the whole facility to blow, didn't bother with subtlety. Before we left, I stood in the control center, uploading one final message to their emergency distress beacon. Earth says, "There's no coming back from this." Then I set the timer and walked out. The blast lit up the moon like a second sun. We watched from orbit, silent. None of us smiled. We didn't need to. The vengeance wasn't for celebration. It was for closure. A week later, we got the name of the traitor, the one who tipped off Rim 6, human, ex-diplomat, Earthborn, worked with the Concordate's peace delegation. He'd been selling coordinates of our raids in exchange for credits, promising to help certain rings relocate before our strike teams arrived. He'd been doing it for months. He was stationed on Virion, a pleasure planet. Thought he was untouchable. Had bodyguards, safe houses, and corporate immunity from 3 systems. Didn't matter. We found him. He was eating fruit in a penthouse garden when Brannick walked in. No words, just one bullet, center mass. Justice. We didn't bury him, didn't report the kill, didn't even write his name in the logs, just erased him from existence, because traitors don't get graves, they get silence. After that, the Ghost Fleet changed. Something shifted in all of us. We started moving faster, hitting harder. No more questions, no more negotiations. May stopped wearing civilian clothes. She wore black combat gear now, always next to Brannick. Not in the fight, not yet. But close enough to see everything, to learn. She never flinched. She watched, waited. One night I asked her, "Why do you stay with us?" She looked up, eyes hard, no trace of the child we pulled out of that cage. "Because I want to be the last thing they see." I didn't have an answer to that. Because she wasn't wrong. Earth had been patient, diplomatic, civilized, and the universe had taken advantage of it, stolen our children, tortured them, sold them, experimented on their minds and treated their screams like data points. Now the bill was due, and every star that harbored those monsters would pay it in fire. We were no longer ghosts. That became obvious the day the Vornak Confederacy fell. They were one of the oldest members of the Galactic Concordat, diplomats, scholars, traders, but they had also invested quietly in Eufrex Biotech, one of the key corporations that had acquired Terran children for neural pattern extraction. They didn't torture directly. They funded those who did. And Earth decided that was enough. There were no broadcasts this time, no announcements, no threats, just fire. Orbital imaging showed how it started. A formation of Terran destroyers descending over Raxiel, the Vornak homeworld. No warning shots, no words, just kinetic rods dropping like God's fury. 16 cities gone in 20 seconds. The Vornak Chancellor issued a formal protest through Concordat High Command. He never lived to finish it. His transmission ended mid-sentence when his palace exploded on live feed. No missile trail, no ship signature, nothing. He was erased. The message was loud. We don't care about your rules anymore. We were back on the ship, orbiting one of the frontier systems. I watched it unfold through fleet transmissions, the reports flowing like a river of shock. Species that once laughed at Terrans were now sending apologies. Some offered reparations. Others opened their data vaults. Everything they had on slaver networks, biotech companies, shadow brokers, even hidden colonies with rumors of trafficking. Brannick didn't flinch at any of it. He just loaded his rifle. May sat next to him, cross-legged, cleaning a sidearm she'd picked off one of the mercs. She didn't say much these days, just watched. That girl had gone from broken to forged, and what came out of that fire? It wasn't innocent anymore. The next operation came from High Priority Command, Nova Syndicate. One of the oldest, most elusive trafficking networks in the Outer Rim. Never caught, never even seen. They didn't leave trails, no ledgers, no victims alive. But someone slipped. A shipment manifest was intercepted in an abandoned relay node near Proxima Tesh. It was encrypted using Dead Earth protocols, code formats from centuries ago. Old Earth before the Galactic Age. Only one kind of enemy does that, one that studied us. Inside the manifest were coordinates, a cluster of moons orbiting a dying star in the Vel sector. The moons had no names, just numbers. One of them, JX9, had faint energy readings, barely detectable unless you were looking for them. We were looking. We took the Crucible, a heavy stealth ship designed for precision strikes. Brannick, me, 2 other veterans from the Ganymede incursion, and a silent teenager who'd turned 15 last week. May. She insisted on coming. We said no. She stood in front of the hangar doors and said nothing, just stared at Brannick. He stared back, then handed her a sidearm. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just nodded and walked on board like she'd done it 1,000 times. We touched down on JX9 under cover of the dying star's radiation belt. The base was buried under ice, cloaked in layers of frozen methane and reinforced metal. Inside, a self-contained city, laboratories, cryo chambers, research wings, and humans. Not just children this time, families. Whole bloodlines taken from Earth colonies over decades. Some of the names matched people long thought dead. Others were registered as missing with no explanation. They were all here, sleeping, waiting to be dissected. And around them, alien researchers, data drones, AI sentinels built with Terran programming cores stripped from old Earth relics. It was personal. We didn't knock. We didn't breach with caution. We entered with fury. The front sentry room had 4 guards. They died before their eyes even processed movement. Brannick was a force of nature, precise, ruthless, silent. I covered rear, clearing drones that tried to lock doors behind us. May stuck close, not fighting, just watching. Learning. Memorizing the layout, the movement, the patterns. She moved like water. Not a sound. The lab core was deeper than expected. 3 floors underground, surrounded by AI-operated defense nodes. We disabled them manually. Didn't want noise, didn't want the other moons to know what was happening. Inside the cryo vault, I found an access console. Logged in. A name popped up. Nova Prime, Initiator Class. Subject, Project Voicebreaker. I opened the files, and my stomach turned. It was a project built entirely around testing human grief. Children were placed in scenarios designed to force emotional collapse, fake deaths, staged torture of family members, sensory deprivation, and endless loops of artificial memories. Then their pain responses were mapped, recorded, sold. As entertainment, not medicine, not science, entertainment. Some alien elites paid to feel the pain of a dying human child in virtual reality. We downloaded it all. Brannick stood over the pod of a Terran girl. Her nameplate read, Subject 004B, Voice Stress Max Yield. She was 7. We pulled the plug. Woke her. She screamed at first, flinched, then locked eyes with Brannick, and stopped. Are you real? She asked. He didn't say anything. He just knelt, held out his hand. She took it. And that was it. There were over 80 survivors in total. Malnourished, mentally scarred, but alive. We didn't wait for exfil. We called in the fleet, the full fleet. Not stealth, not quiet. Terran warships appeared over the moon like death in orbit. Their shadows covered the ice, their weapons charged without hesitation. We gave one warning. Evacuate any civilian. This is your only chance. None took it. The whole moon was a den of parasites. So we leveled it, took the survivors first, cryo-lifted to safety, then dropped seismic torpedoes into the heart of the lab system. The ground cracked, and the moon screamed. Somewhere deep under the ice, data cores melted, history erased, but not forgotten. Because we broadcast every piece of data before the detonation, to every concordate channel. Unfiltered, unedited, a 6-hour stream of what the Nova Syndicate did to human children. No species could look away. Some refused to believe it. Others wept. A few cheered. Those would be next. 2 days later, the Concordate voted to expel Earth from the Central Council. We laughed. We didn't need their seats. We never needed their approval. That same day, 12 member species submitted formal surrender to Earth, not out of defeat, out of guilt. They had funded programs, turned blind eyes, approved trade routes. Now they were begging for amnesty. They offered reparations, prisoners, even ships. Earth took the data, not the apologies. We didn't need their words. We needed closure, the kind only fire delivers. We always thought the syndicates were the end of the line. We thought the monsters we faced, the slavers, the biotech lords, the smugglers peddling pain and innocence, were the ones pulling the strings. We were wrong. It wasn't until we hit Sector Zeran 4, a dead zone on all concordate maps, that we found the truth. The fleet had picked up a hidden signal buried inside the data cores we ripped from the Nova Syndicate. A failsafe. A ping beacon. It was sent to one location. Nowhere we recognized, nowhere that appeared on any of Earth's star charts. But the signal bounced off relay points. Not just one. 9. Each relay ancient, older than anything we'd seen, and each one encoded with one repeating phrase. Origin Keeper Directive, Project Edenfall. That's when Command called us in. Back aboard the flagship Nox Eternum, the atmosphere was different. There was no victory buzz, no debriefing, just tension. And silence. The Admiral stood in front of us. An old man with titanium bones and eyes so gray they looked like dying stars. He didn't waste time. This isn't about revenge anymore, he said. This is about extermination. We didn't ask what he meant. We just waited. He tapped the console. A hologram burst open, massive, black, angular, a space station or a ship too large to measure, buried in the void beyond any known system, no orbit, no pulse, just silence. Yet it pulsed with gravitational readings so intense that even nearby moons bent around it unnaturally. "We call it the core," he pointed. "It's the last node in the chain, the place the syndicate called home, but didn't control. They were middlemen. You want the real architects of child slavery? They're here." We stared at it. I remember the pit in my stomach. The kind of dread that doesn't come from fear, but from knowing you're standing at the edge of something older and colder than evil. Brannick leaned forward. "Species?" The Admiral shook his head. "We don't know. Whatever they are, they've been here longer than any concordate race. Pre-galactic era tech, pre-light civilizations." I spoke next. "What do they want?" The Admiral looked at me, and for the first time, his voice cracked. "Control of suffering. They believe pain is energy, that trauma contains universal secrets, and that human children feel it louder than any other being." I couldn't speak. None of us could, he continued. The syndicates, the labs, the buyers, they were experiments, field tests, proof of concept. But the core, that's where it all was perfected. The worst atrocities didn't happen in cells or basements. They happened on operating tables floating inside that monolith, and we let it go unnoticed for centuries. Brannick clenched his fists. May was in the corner, eyes narrowed. No emotion. Then she said what none of us dared to. "Then we burn it." The Admiral didn't argue. He nodded. "That's why you're here." So we prepared. No diplomatic cover. No concordate oversight. No command fallback. Just us, the burn team. The ones they sent when they wanted silence, when they wanted history rewritten in fire. We dropped out of warp 3 clicks from the structure. It hung in the dark like a godless cathedral, monolithic, angular, black like spilled ink across space. No lights, no comms. But we knew they saw us. They'd seen Earth's path of vengeance, and they were waiting. The moment our ships crossed the threshold of their gravitational field, something hit us. Not missiles. Thought. A burst of psychic energy so raw it fried our sensors. Half the crew collapsed. Others screamed. Memories not their own poured into minds. Visions of children in cages, voices screaming in languages no human had ever spoken, labs filled with flesh machines twitching in agony. It wasn't just data, it was pride. These monsters didn't hide their sins, they celebrated them. We stabilized, barely, lost one dropship, spun into a debris field, pilot brain dead from the psychic spike. But the rest of us? We pushed on. There was only one way in, a massive hangar bay that opened as we approached, like it was inviting us. We entered anyway. The inside of the core was worse than anything I'd ever imagined. Not metal, not stone, bone. The walls pulsed, glistened. Carved with sigils written in blood we recognized, Terran blood. The floor was slick, not with oil, with grief. Our boots echoed with the weight of every scream that had ever passed through this place. Automated sentries appeared, not machines. Living things, twisted into armor, fused with flesh, eyes still blinking. They attacked. We didn't hesitate. Plasma lit the halls. Screams, hissing, the sound of bone breaking under rifle butts. Brannick tore through them like judgment incarnate. May fought too, no longer an observer. She moved with terrifying calm, placing rounds between eyes, cutting through monsters that had once been scientists, guards, or children reshaped into things that served. We fought for hours, room by room, chamber by chamber, until we reached the central dome. It wasn't guarded. just a single platform. And on it, a being, not shaped like us, not like any race we knew. It didn't have a face, just light swirling under translucent skin. It spoke directly into our minds. "You are late," it said. I felt ice slide through my veins. "Who are you?" I asked. It pulsed. "We are the ones who gave your species meaning. Your pain birthed our enlightenment. You suffer louder than any life form. It is beautiful." Brannick raised his rifle. The being didn't flinch. "We fed on your children's screams and turned them into song. Your grief powered ascension." I stepped forward. "You're not gods. You're parasites." It leaned toward me, though it had no eyes. "And yet we live beyond your time. When your sun is ash, we will still remember the flavor of your children's last cries." May didn't wait. She stepped up, stared into its core. Then whispered, "Remember this," and pulled the trigger. The bullet went through the being's chest, light spilling like ruptured starlight. It didn't die, but it screamed. The sound wasn't audible. It was felt. Bones rattled, teeth bled, ships trembled in orbit, and we hit the detonators. We'd planted seismic nukes throughout the core, from hangar to hull, woven into every system we could reach. The countdown began. As we escaped, sprinting through corridors made of the dead, the station began to collapse on itself. Screams echoed through the psychic field. Not pain, not fear, confusion. They didn't understand. They believed we'd worship their intellect. They believed Earth would kneel. Instead, we lit the match and let the galaxy watch it burn. From orbit, it looked like a star dying, a black sun unraveling. No escape pods. No transmissions, just silence. The good kind. The kind that follows justice. The kind that buries evil. When we returned to the fleet, Command didn't greet us with fanfare. There were no medals, no celebration, just nods. Because we weren't heroes. We were reminders that Earth may forgive a lot of things, but it never forgets the ones who hurt its children. You'd think it would feel like victory. After all the dead, the screams, the smoke rising from 100 shattered stations, you'd think silence would bring peace. It didn't, not for me, not for Brannick, not for any of us, and especially not for May, the girl who was once a number in a syndicate lab, who once slept in chains, now stood at the center of humanity's greatest transformation. And she was cold. Not emotionless, not cruel, just cold in the way a scalpel is cold. Precision without warmth, purpose without pause. We had just come back from burning the core. It was over, they said. The last architect of Project Edenfall was dead. The core was vaporized. Syndicate channels had collapsed under the weight of leaked Terran data. Biotech networks were disassembled. Species fled their own planets in fear of retribution. The Concordat itself had fractured. Dozens of systems declared neutrality overnight. Others asked for Terran protection. But the real shift happened back on Earth. For the first time in centuries, the United Human Systems held a full planetary vote. Not just representatives, not politicians, everyone. And the vote passed with 97% in favor. No more children taken, no more silence. Any species, government, or system that traffics human life shall be declared enemy, permanently. Without negotiation. They called it the Burn Doctrine. I called it the only law we ever needed. We weren't conquerors. We didn't want land, resources, colonies. We wanted something the stars had stolen from us and never returned. Security. So we built it ourselves. The Child Watch protocol launched across the Sol system first. Every ship, station, and outpost equipped with biometric scan layers tied to missing persons databases. Within weeks, human traffickers on Earth and Mars were pulled from hiding, tried, and executed without ceremony. Then we spread the net off-world. Every planet that had housed even a whisper of involvement with child slavery was given one chance: cooperate or become history. Some did. Others hesitated. Those didn't exist anymore. You wouldn't find their names on updated star charts. Their cultures, data, and species records were archived as ashes, not erased, remembered, as a warning. I was stationed on Eidolon, a repurposed science vessel turned refugee recovery ship. We weren't military, not in the way we'd been during the war. Our mission was different now. We searched the quiet corners of space for the ones who'd been left behind. The forgotten, the broken, the samples still floating in cryo, in chains, or worse. And we brought them home. I watched dozens of children wake up in recovery pods, blinking at artificial light, unsure if they were alive or dreaming. Some cried, some screamed, others just curled into themselves and never spoke again. But they were home, and we made sure no one would ever take that away from them again. May didn't stay on Eidolon. She'd outgrown recovery. She was operating now, high clearance. Her own call sign, her own squad. They called her Ashmark. The name came from what she left behind at every op site, a small sigil burned into the floor with plasma. Just a mark, nothing more. But everyone knew what it meant. The children here had been avenged, the monsters here had been found, and Earth had passed through. Brannick. He didn't talk much anymore. He followed May's lead now, watched her like a father, a ghost, and a weapon all at once. He never smiled, not since that boy on Rim 6 died in his arms, the one with the barcode tattooed on his chest. But when May ordered a breach, he didn't blink. He was the hammer. She was the trigger. One day I asked her, "How long will you keep going?" She didn't look up from her datapad. When they stopped running, I nodded. That was the thing. They were still running. Even after the core fell, after the warships screamed across star systems, there were still some who clung to the shadows. Black market pockets, isolated colonies, old money. It was always the same pattern. They thought Earth would move on, thought we'd grow soft after vengeance. But we didn't. We got efficient. May was leading Operation Hololight now, a full-spectrum sweep of Concordate's former trade routes, using AI crawlers to find encrypted manifests in abandoned networks. The amount of names that surfaced? Unthinkable. Some of them weren't even alien. Some were Earthborn. CEOs, scientists, politicians, people who had once smiled in holoscreens and talked about progress and galactic cooperation. May published the names. No trials, just names, faces. And then, silence. No bodies were ever found. Just that symbol. Burned into doorways, into desks, into walls, Ashmark. That was her justice. That was ours. But not everyone agreed. There was resistance. Some humans called it excessive, said we had become monsters, that we were using the pain of the past as a sword instead of a memory. I met one of them at a conference. Young, bright-eyed, wore clean robes, spoke softly. She looked me in the eye and said, "Do you really believe burning whole planets brings peace?" I didn't answer with words. I handed her a datapad. On it was one file, just audio. A little girl whispering. "They made me watch them cut my brother open. I counted 12 times before he stopped moving. Then they made me eat. I didn't want to. I still feel him when I sleep." The woman dropped the datapad. Didn't speak again, walked out of the room. I never saw her again. That was the thing no one outside Earth understood. This wasn't about peace. This wasn't about justice. This was about promises. We promised the kids we found that they'd never be forgotten, that every one of their screams would echo in the bones of the stars. And we weren't finished yet. We wouldn't stop until the galaxy itself apologized. Not with words, with silence. True silence. Not the kind you hear in space. The kind that only comes when every predator is gone. The fleets grew. Earth didn't build for exploration anymore. We built for protection. Stations weren't designed to welcome ambassadors. They were barriers, planetary-scale sentinels that scanned everything and everyone. And when they found anything that smelled like slavery, they called Ashmark. And Ashmark called fire. The children who had survived, the ones who'd woken, grown, trained, they became something the universe had never prepared for. Not soldiers, not victims, but watchers. They became the wardens. No insignia, no rank, no speeches, just silence and shadow, and vengeance, if needed. We built a new organization, not tied to governments or councils. Just Earth, just us, the Children's Blade. I was there the day the monument was raised on Titan. Simple, cold steel, no names, just one phrase carved into its base. They were small, they were stolen. We are many, we remember. May stood at its base, older now, 19, hair cut short, face like iron. Behind her stood the children she'd saved. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. Because Earth was no longer a world. It was a promise. And the stars would never forget what it sounded like when that promise was broken. It began with silence. Not the aftermath of battle, not the tense calm that follows when smoke clears and bodies cool. This silence was deeper, older. It wasn't absence, it was expectation. The stars waited. Because the war was over. We'd burned the syndicates, buried the core, erased the slavers, and exposed the collaborators. Earth had gone from underdog to myth, a name spoken only in caution and fear. But fear fades, and something new had begun to rise from the ashes. It wasn't enough to destroy the past. Now came the reckoning, the shaping of what came next. May stood on the bridge of the Sovereign Dagger, Earth's new flagship. She wasn't 17 anymore. She wasn't 19. No one remembered her age now. They only remembered what she had become. The girl in chains was now the voice of Earth's blade, and the galaxy was about to hear her speak. The Concordate remnants, or what was left of them, had sent an invitation, an emergency summit on Narcissus 9, a neutral moon untouched by war. They wanted peace. They wanted to rebuild. They wanted Earth's forgiveness. May didn't reply. She arrived, not with a fleet, not with weapons drawn, not even in uniform. She walked onto the summit floor in simple black, no rank insignia, no emblems, just a child's bracelet on her wrist, threadbare, faded. From the first day she'd been rescued, it had belonged to another girl, one who hadn't made it. The delegates stood when she entered. Dozens of species. Pale faces, scaled faces, gas-masked and tentacled, all of them afraid to breathe the wrong way, because they knew what she'd done. She didn't speak at first, just looked at them, one by one. Then finally, slowly, she walked to the center of the chamber. She took out a small device, pressed it, the lights dimmed, a recording began to play. Voices, children's voices, crying, pleading, screaming, real, unedited. The room flinched. Some delegates covered their ears, others wept, one collapsed. May let it play for 2 full minutes, then shut it off. Silence returned. She spoke, not loud, not theatrical, just enough. "You built this." No one replied. She stepped forward. "For centuries, your economies grew fat off human grief. Your labs ran on our pain. Your leaders signed agreements behind smiling teeth while our children bled in cages." A Vornak representative tried to interrupt. She looked at him. He sat back down. May continued. "You thought Earth would forget. That we'd get angry, scream, burn a few places down, then beg for peace. She paused. We're not here to beg. The Concordat Chancellor, a withered-looking humanoid with synthetic eyes, finally spoke. His voice trembled. Humanity's vengeance was understood, necessary, but the time for war is past. It's time to build bridges again. It's time to return to diplomacy. May didn't blink. You want diplomacy? He nodded, hopeful. She reached into her coat, pulled out a second item, a small square frame. Inside was a picture, a group of children, lined up against a wall, shackles on their arms, terror in their eyes. All human. The room tensed. I was number 6, she said. I remember every name in that photo. None of them are alive now. She handed the frame to the Chancellor. He took it with shaking hands. Diplomacy doesn't erase that. She turned back to the chamber. So here's how this goes. You want peace? You earn it. And she laid down the terms. 1. Any system proven to have participated in human slavery, directly or indirectly, would be dismantled. Not sanctioned, dismantled, economically, politically, if needed, physically. 2. Earth would not join the new council. We would watch it, from above, with guns ready. 3. Every child found in captivity, human or otherwise, would be liberated. Any species refusing to cooperate would be listed as hostile and treated accordingly. 4. A new memorial, funded by every species in the chamber, would be built on the core's ashes. No statues, just names. Every stolen child's name ever recorded, in every language, etched into black metal that could never be altered, never erased. Forever. The silence that followed her words wasn't political. It was human. It was shame, shaped into a pause, and they all nodded. Every single delegate, not because they agreed, because they had no choice. May turned and walked out of the chamber. Never looked back. Back on Earth, things were changing. The Children's Blade became more than an elite task force. It became a doctrine, a global oath. Every Terran child now carried a microchip, not for control, for protection. If they went missing, satellites would search within seconds. AI systems would track every lead, and if they crossed a star border, ships would follow. The wardens, the rescued children who had become warriors, now trained new recruits. Not to wage war, but to prevent one. The universe would never again see humans as soft or silent. We were flame with memory now. May returned to Titan only once after the summit. She stood at the monument again. Still no names carved. Just that same phrase. They were small. They were stolen. We are many. We remember. I found her there. She wasn't crying. She didn't speak. She just touched the cold steel. I asked her if she was tired. She didn't answer. So I asked her if she was done. She finally looked at me. Done? She said softly. The war ended. The killing stopped. But we're not done. Then what's left? I asked. She looked at the stars and whispered, making sure they never forget. In time, the galaxy would change. Maybe in 1,000 years, the younger species would look at Earth and see monsters. Maybe they'd say we were too brutal, too fast with justice. But they'd never say we were weak, and they'd never say we let it happen again. Because we are the race that remembered. The ones who answered pain with fire. The ones who rose from cages. Picked up our dead and said, no more. And that made the stars burn. Forever.